This happened a few months ago. I was 32 and had just started working as a night nurse at a small hospital on the edge of town. I took the job to help with bills for my family. The hospital felt old and crumbling, with flickering lights and long, dark hallways. The blue walls weren't calming at night. They felt heavy and wrong. On my first shift, everything seemed normal. I checked in on patients and made sure supplies were ready. The place was quiet. Too quiet. But then I heard laughter coming from room 204. It was soft and strange. I stopped in my tracks. That room was empty. The patient had been discharged days ago. It sent a chill down my spine. I shook my head and continued my rounds, thinking I was just hearing things. As the days went on, the strange feelings kept growing. One night, at the nurse's station, the lights flickered more than usual. Shadows danced on the walls. I stood up, my heart racing. I looked around but saw nothing. I told myself it was just fatigue, but the unease lingered. I could feel something wasn't right. Then one night, the laughter came back. But this time, it sounded different, more like a child sobbing. I froze outside room 204 again. The sobs were muffled, like a small voice crying for help. I glanced down the empty hallway. My gut told me to check on the few patients we had left, but I felt stuck. It was as if something was holding me in place. After what felt like ages, I turned away, unable to move forward. That same night, I decided to walk the dim hallways. I thought it might ease the dread weighing on my chest. As I walked, I caught a glimpse of movement. A shadow flitted past the corner of my eye. I spun around, thinking it was one of the aides. Nothing was there. The cold air made me shiver. I couldn't remember how fast I ran back to the nurse's station, but my heart pounded loudly in my ears. By my next shift, I felt panic creeping in. I walked in and immediately heard the laughter again. It was clearer, closer. I knocked on the door of room 204, half hoping someone would answer. Silence. Just an empty room. When I turned around, I saw a figure standing at the end of the hallway. It was just a shadow, but it felt like it was staring at me. A chill ran through me. Then, the laughter echoed right behind me. I whipped around. Nothing was there, just the dark, empty hallway. I didn't know what to think. My mind raced. What was happening in this hospital? Each laugh and sob left me feeling twisted inside. I couldn't shake off the feeling that something was watching me. The walls felt like they were closing in. Every night, I questioned whether I could keep working there. I felt afraid of the shadows, afraid of the laughter, afraid of the hospital I was supposed to care for. The next night seemed darker than usual. As I clocked in, an unsettling weight filled the air. I took a deep breath and went straight to the nurse's station, hoping to find some calm in familiar paperwork. The fluorescent lights flickered again, casting eerie shadows that made the old walls pulse like a heartbeat. I squeezed my eyes shut, but the laughter from room 204 echoed in my mind. I told myself I needed to be brave. I had patients to care for. I picked up my clipboard and got ready to check on the two patients we had on the ward. Mrs. Thompson was asleep in her bed, her soft breaths a welcome sound. I moved quietly to the next room. Cartwright stirred when I walked in. He was elderly and had been recovering from surgery. His eyes blinked open, and he smiled weakly at me. "Is everything all right, dear?" he asked, his voice shaky. Yes, sir. Just checking in on you," I reassured him. But I felt my heart skip. The laughter rang in my ears again. I forced myself to focus on Mr. Cartwright, but I could feel the heaviness settling back over me. Once I left his room and stepped into the hallway, I felt the pull of room 204 again. The laughter, it was louder now, almost urgent. I swore it had a curious tone, like it was inviting me. I stood frozen, anguish battling curiosity inside me. It wasn't a mere sound anymore. It felt like a call to action. Deciding to be brave, I approached the door. I knocked softly, too afraid to push it open. "Hello? Is anyone there?" I waited, holding my breath for a response. Just silence. But then, a soft whisper floated out, and I shivered. "Help me." My heart raced. It sounded so real, so pained. I hesitated. Something told me not to go in, yet I was drawn to that innocent plea. Taking a breath, I turned the doorknob. The door creaked open, just like in a horror movie. The room was still, the bed made, the air stale and cold. I took a step inside, scanning for any sign of life. "Where are you?" I whispered, clutching the doorframe. Then I noticed something on the floor, a large, dusty teddy bear, its fur matted, as if abandoned. That simple toy sent a wave of unease through me. Instinctively, I knelt and picked it up, a faint message creeping into my mind, not abandoned. The sensation was strong. I felt eyes on me again, but this time it was more than just a feeling. It felt protective. Just then, the lights in the room flickered violently. I dropped the teddy bear, which landed with a dull thud, and whipped around, fully expecting to see a figure behind me. But the room was empty. My breath quickened, and suddenly, the hallway seemed impossibly long, and then it happened. Everything went dark. The lights blinked out completely, swallowing the room in pitch blackness. I felt my panic swell as shadows began to move around me, whispering incoherent thoughts like long-lost memories. I stumbled out of room 204, my mind racing, not knowing where to turn. But the only sound was the soft, haunting laughter, echoing through the darkness. It felt like a trap, and I was stuck in the middle of it. I stood in the cold hallway, my heart thudding in my chest. The laughter faded, but whispers lingered. They danced just out of reach, like the rustling of curtains in an unseen breeze. I needed to move, to escape this choking silence. That I turned towards the nurse's station. The glow from the monitors painted my path, but each step felt heavy. I didn't want to tell anyone about what happened. They'd think I was losing my mind. I had to figure this out alone. Cartwright was still in my thoughts. I couldn't shake the feeling that something was wrong with him. I took a deep breath and decided to check on him again. His room was only a few steps away, but it felt like a mile. I pushed the door open, ready for anything. The room was bathed in the soft pale light of the night lamp. Mr. Cartwright was sitting up in bed, looking lost. His gaze didn't meet mine, it was like he was staring through the walls into some distant place. "Are you all right?" I asked, my voice breaking the quiet. That he blinked slowly. "I had a dream, dear." "What kind of dream?" I inquired, inching closer. "About a little girl," he muttered, his voice lost in thought. "She was playing. But then she was crying." His eyes suddenly found mine, a spark of fear evident. "I think she needs help." My breath hitched. Another twist in the nightmare. "What did she look like?" I urged, desperate for answers. "Brown hair, a teddy bear in her arms. She kept calling for someone." His voice broke, and a shiver ran down my spine. The description matched almost perfectly with the toy from room 204. "Mr. Cartwright," I began, but before I could form my thoughts, a loud crash came from the opposite end of the hallway. It echoed through the ward, cutting through our conversation like a knife. Mr. Cartwright's eyes widened with terror. "What was that?" I drew in a shaky breath. "I don't know, but I'll check." I felt the pull again, the call urging me toward the sound. I clenched my fists. I couldn't just sit by. "Stay here. I'll be right back." As I stepped into the hallway, the unsettling shadows flickered momentarily, almost beckoning me forward. I moved cautiously, my heart racing with every step. The laughter, now softer, seemed to weave in and out of the silence around me. I reached the end of the hall, where the crash had come from. My skin prickled as I peered around the corner. There, on the floor, was the refuge of the night shift, the supply room. Distant light spilled from inside. But it wasn't just the usual supplies scattered. It was the tattered remnants of toys, a broken rocking horse, pieces of games, and behind it all, the same matted teddy bear, its button eyes reflecting the glow like dark stars. That's when I saw it. A figure stood in the far corner, shrouded in shadows, unmoving. My breath caught in my throat. Was it the girl from Mr. Cartwright's dream? Or something else? I opened my mouth to scream, but nothing came out. Would I be able to help her, or was I walking straight into another trap? I blinked, trying to adjust to the dim light. The figure remained still, its outline blurred but unmistakably human. I took a hesitant step forward, my heart pounding in my ears. "Hello?" I called out, breaking the thick silence. My voice felt small and helpless. No response. The figure seemed to shift slightly. I squinted, trying to see better. That's when I noticed a small hand reaching out from beneath the shadows, clutching something. My stomach twisted. Are you okay?" I asked again, fearing the answer. The shadows shifted again, and for a brief moment, I could have sworn I saw a flash of brown hair and the outline of a teddy bear. Then a soft whimper broke through the tension. It was a plea, a sound that resonated deep within me. I was drawn forward, eager to help, but an instinct held me back. Something didn't feel right. The air was thick, almost suffocating. Suddenly, from behind me, I heard Mr. Cartwright's voice rise in panic. "Don't go any closer. You don't know what it is." I turned back to look at him, confusion washing over me. "What do you mean?" He struggled to sit up, alarm flashing across his face. "It's not just a girl. It could be a trick, a distraction." I looked back at the figure. It hadn't moved, but I could feel the malice hanging in the air like a storm. My instincts screamed at me to run, but I couldn't just abandon the child. "If she needs help, stay where you are," Mr. Cartwright shouted, his voice fierce but shaky. That I hesitated, rooted to my spot. The soft whimper came again, drawing my gaze back. The figure looked small and helpless, just a child calling for someone. But Mr. Cartwright's warning echoed in my ears. The tension snapped when the figure suddenly bolted from the shadows, rushing toward me. A chill shot down my spine. I stumbled backward. My fear consumed me. "No. Wait. Get away." Mr. Cartwright cried. That in a panic, I turned to run, but as I did, I tripped over the remnants of a broken toy, crashing to the floor. The world spun momentarily before I regained my bearings. The figure stood just a few feet away, its face illuminated by the flickering light of the supply room. What I saw threw ice through my veins. It wasn't a child, it was a face twisted in anger, eyes wild and wide. It wasn't the girl Mr. Cartwright described at all. "Help me!" It screeched, but the voice was wrong, guttural and dark. That in that moment, the reality of my situation crashed over me. This was no innocent child lost. I scrambled to my feet, heart racing. I could hear Mr. Cartwright's labored breaths, the urgency in his voice barely breaking through my panic. "You need to get out of there. Now." I turned, short breaths escaping me as I forced myself to move toward the exit. But as I reached the threshold, the figure lunged, and everything went dark. I came to on the cold floor of the supply room, the air heavy with dust and dread. My pulse throbbed in my ears, drowning out everything else. As I blinked the days away, I instinctively scrambled to stand. The flickering light barely illuminated the chaos around me. "Mr. Cartwright!" I gasped, my voice trembling. There was no answer, just the unsettling quiet. I felt a surge of panic. Had something happened to him? The memory of the figure surged back, its distorted face. I shivered at the thought. Carefully, I peered around, half expecting to see that face again. "Mr. Cartwright!" I called again, a little louder this time. That I slowly moved towards the doorway, feeling along the wall for support. But as I reached for the doorframe, I heard a shuffling sound behind me. The hair on my arms raised, and I turned slowly. The figure was there, but it was different now. It was crouched low, its body quaking, seemingly caught in a fit of convulsions. I stepped back, instinctively raising my hands like they could shield me. "Please, help me," it rasped, the voice cracking. As it spoke, I caught a glimpse of the teddy bear, matted and worn, lying dirty against the ground at its feet. "I just want to go home." Something twisted in my gut. What was happening? "Get away from it!" Mr. Cartwright shouted from somewhere behind me, his voice breaking through my haze. But my eyes were glued to the figure. Whatever horror had taken place before, it felt different now. It looked desolate, not angry. "Help," it whispered again, and I took a shaky step forward. "Please." "No." Mr. Cartwright yelled. "Run. It's trying to trick you." His insistence snapped me out of my trance. I pivoted, rushing back toward the doorway, desperation giving my legs speed. I was almost through when I felt something cold grip my ankle. I fell hard, crashing to the floor, and the air left my lungs in a gasp. I twisted around, heart racing, and there it was, the figure, its hand gripping my leg tightly, eyes wide with what seemed like pain. "Don't leave me." Its plea sent a new wave of fear crashing over me. I kicked free, scrambling back to the door. But as I reached for the handle, I hesitated. What if it was trying to get help? What if it was just a scared child? I pounded on the door, trying to summon the help I so desperately needed. "Mr. Cartwright. Help." But there were no sounds beyond the door, just silence. The grip on my ankle released, and I scrambled outside, feeling as if I had just escaped something far worse than darkness. That I in the dim hallway, I caught my breath, my mind racing with confusion and fear. I turned back to the door, sensing I had to make a decision: go back inside or find another way out. But then I heard it. A soft, whispering voice drifting from the supply room. "Stay with me." I froze. Something was very wrong. I took a step back, not sure if I should run or listen. Just then, I heard a crash from inside the supply room, followed by a low, guttural growl. I felt dread clutch at my throat. Whatever that figure was, it wasn't ready to let me go just yet. I glanced back at the door, my heart hammering in my chest. The urgency in the figure's voice mixed with the growl made it impossible to think straight. I needed to get out of here. Then, movement caught my eye down the hall. A shadow flitted past. I squinted, but it was gone. My gut twisted. What was happening? I took a cautious step back, my instincts screaming at me to run. But I couldn't leave. I needed to find Mr. Cartwright. He was still in there, and I couldn't shake the feeling that something terrible was happening. As I steeled myself, I heard another crash from the supply room. My pulse quickened again. "Stay with me," the voice called again, softer this time. It was like a siren, luring me back. Before I could second-guess myself, I turned and dashed down the hallway. My footsteps echoed against the sterile tiles, and I nearly slipped in my haste. I pressed my back against the wall, panting as I neared the doorway. I peered around the frame, but the sight inside sent chills shooting through me. The room was a mess. Boxes were toppled over, and the flickering light barely illuminated the chaos. Mr. Cartwright was nowhere to be seen. The figure was still there, but it had straightened up from its crouch. Now it was standing, swaying like a tree in a storm, its head tilted at an unnatural angle. "Help me," it spoke again, and my heart ached at the sound. But I remembered Mr. Cartwright's voice. I couldn't trust it. I was about to retreat when something caught my eye. Nestled among the wreckage was Mr. Cartwright's badge, the light glinting off it just enough to let me know he had been there. I stepped forward, reaching for it, but the figure lunged. "Don't go." I stumbled back, gasp escaping my lips. Its eyes, those wide, haunted eyes, were locked onto mine, and I couldn't break the gaze. I felt fear wrap around me like a heavy fog. "Please, just help me," it cried, the desperation echoing through the room. A surge of empathy rushed through me, but I squeezed my eyes shut. I couldn't give in. Then, I heard something else, a sound from behind me, echoing down the corridor. It was heavy and relentless, a footstep, then another. My heart sank. Someone was coming, and it didn't sound friendly. "Listen, I can't help you," I shouted, forcing my feet to move away from the door. I needed to get out. "I have to go." As I turned to flee, the growling sound returned, louder this time, almost like a warning. The air became thick, a pressure wrapping around me like a vice. I sprinted down the corridor, glancing over my shoulder. The figure had stopped moving, but its eyes followed me, burning with intensity. Before I could reach the staircase, I heard a heavy thud behind me, followed by a crash. Then a voice that was unmistakably Mr. Cartwright's, strained and angry. "Why did you leave me?" I froze again. What had happened to him? But before I could think, the growling returned, now joined by a chorus of whispers filling the hallway. I couldn't understand the words, but the tone was unmistakably threatening. That I took a deep breath and picked up my pace, fear pushing me forward. I needed to escape before this nightmare swallowed me whole. But as I raced toward the stairs, I knew I was about to stumble into something even darker than I could imagine. I burst through the door leading to the stairwell, my breath coming in ragged gasps. The noise faded behind me, but the echoes of Mr. Cartwright's voice haunted my mind. Desperation clawed at my insides. I had to find him, but fear was heavy on my shoulders. That I sprinted down the stairs, 2 steps at a time. My palms slick against the metal railing, I desperately tried to shake off the terror gripping me. What would I find? Was he hurt? I could almost hear the whispers from the hallway again, swirling in my mind, taunting me. When I reached the ground floor, I skidded to a stop. The emergency lights flickered ominously, casting shadows that danced along the walls. I strained my ears, listening for any signs of life. All I could hear was the steady thrum of my heart in my ears. I checked the nearby nursing station, but it was empty. "Mr. Cartwright?" My voice trembled in the silence. No response. "Where are you?" Then, a loud bang echoed from deeper inside the hospital. Instinctively, I turned toward the sound. A part of me screamed to run, but I couldn't abandon him. Not now. Not when I was so close. As I moved deeper into the hospital, the air grew colder, almost biting. My breath fogged in front of me. I followed the sound, my skin prickling with every step. The lights above hummed and flickered, casting an unsettling glow. I made my way to the break room. The noise had seemed to come from that direction. The door was ajar, swinging slightly as if swayed by an unseen force. I pushed it open cautiously. The sight inside made my stomach churn. The break room was trashed. Chairs were overturned, and dishes lay scattered across the floor. But that wasn't the most disturbing part. There on the table lay scattered, bloody sheets, like remnants from a gruesome scene. My mouth went dry. This was wrong. This wasn't the type of chaos an ordinary night shift created. I backed away slowly, my heart racing again when I noticed something glinting beneath the debris. I bent down, pulling aside a blood-stained rag to reveal Mr. Cartwright's penlight. "Mr. Cartwright!" I shouted, panic rising in my throat. Then, suddenly, there was a soft thud behind me. I whipped around, my breath hitching in fear. Nothing. Just the darkened corridor behind me. I could feel it again, the sense of being watched, closing in on me. Before I had time to react, a low growl came from the far corner of the room. My heart sank. I forced myself to look, to confront whatever was lurking in the shadows. That I squinted into the dim light, and that's when I saw it. A figure crouched there, shrouded in darkness. My pulse raced as I felt the familiar pull of its gaze. "Help me," it whispered, its voice echoing off the walls like a chilling lullaby. My instinct screamed to flee, but I stood frozen, the penlight clutched tightly in my hand. I was trapped between the figure and the door, and I realized I wasn't alone in this haunted place anymore. "Get away from me!" I shouted hoarsely, hoping to find some courage. But the figure began to rise, and I felt the very air around me grow thin. "Why did you leave?" It echoed in a voice that sent a shiver down my spine. As I inched backward, the lights flickered violently, plunging the room into darkness. Panic flooded me. I had to escape. I turned to run, not knowing what would follow me into that abyss. I stumbled back into the hallway, my heart pounding in my chest. The darkness loomed behind me, but I didn't dare look back. I sprinted down the corridor, my feet racing against the cold tile floor. Every shadow felt like it was reaching for me, pulling me back. That I needed to find a safe place, somewhere that felt real. The nursing station was just ahead. I burst through the door, gasping for breath. I slammed it shut and leaned against it, heart racing as I scanned the small room. The fluorescent lights overhead buzzed noisily, but the air felt still, heavy with ambiguity. "Mr. Cartwright, where are you?" I whispered to myself, trying to calm my racing mind. I raked my fingers through my hair, trying to make sense of the chaos, the blood, the figure. It had felt so real that I grabbed the penlight from my pocket and flicked it on. The beam cut through the dim, revealing a few scattered files and a coffee maker that hadn't been used in ages. I blinked at the stale air, feeling an urge to flee again. That figure's voice still lingered in my mind. "Why did you leave?" It echoed, and I pressed my palms against my ears, trying to drown it out. Then I heard it. Soft footsteps in the hallway. My heart slammed against my ribs. With a deep breath, I crept toward the door and peeked out. The hallway was empty, but I felt that familiar chill creep back into my bones. It was as if the air thickened, pressing down on me. No. I couldn't stay here. I turned to leave when I heard a faint crying sound. My heart dropped again. "Is someone there?" I called out, voice shaky. The crying grew louder, more desperate. It was coming from a patient room nearby. "Help! Please help me!" The frail voice echoed off the walls, sending a shiver down my spine. Without thinking, I moved toward the sound, my legs carrying me forward despite my fear. I pushed open the door to room 207, the hinges creaking ominously. Inside, the room was dark, curtains drawn, giving it an eerie quality. I shook the penlight, and it flickered to life. I trained it on the bed, revealing nothing but empty sheets. "Hello." My voice trembled as I stepped inside. Then I saw her. A woman lay in the corner, eyes wide with fear. "Please, help me," she begged, her voice barely more than a whisper. "What happened?" I asked, stepping closer. Something wasn't right. The woman's eyes glistened, but her body was twisted at an odd angle, as if she had been in some unseen battle. They took him." Her words made no sense. "You have to stop them." Before I could respond, a loud crashing sound echoed from the hallway, making me jump. "What was that?" I asked, my heart racing anew. "Run!" she screamed. "They'll come for you next." A chill ran down my spine as I felt the darkness creeping closer, and just like that, her voice cut off. I turned to flee, adrenaline kicking in, when the lights flickered again, and the crushing realization sunk in. I was not alone anymore. The figure from the break room was there, looming in the doorway, its form shifting in the shadows. Something primal inside me screamed to escape. But as I took my first step, I felt a cold hand grasp my ankle, holding me in place. I was trapped, and the questions of who this figure was, and what it wanted from me, spiraled in my mind. I felt my breath hitch as the icy grip tightened around my ankle. Panic surged in me like a tidal wave. I tried to pull away, but the hand was impossibly strong. My heart raced, a drumbeat of fear resonating in my ears. "Let me go!" I shouted, fighting the urge to scream. The figure shifted closer, its presence heavy in the already oppressive darkness, and I saw its face, or what should have been its face, a featureless expanse, like a blank canvas tainted with shadows. "What do you want? Why did you leave?" A voice thundered from the void, echoing off the walls in a haunting chorus. I recognized it, the same voice that had haunted my thoughts. Suddenly, the grip around my ankle released. I staggered backward, stumbling into the wall. The woman's terrified eyes seemed to plead with me to understand, to act. Instinct took over, and I pushed past the figure standing in the doorway, brushing against the icy shadow. I bolted through the broom closet adjacent to the room, heart racing in my throat. The narrow space felt claustrophobic. I barely squeezed through the archway, knocking over a mop that clattered to the ground. The sound echoed, growing louder in my ears, and my feet barely touched the ground as I fled through the blonde-haired neon maze of the hospital. Down the hall, I saw the break room door flung wide open. I skidded to a halt. The fluorescent lights buzzed above, and I glanced back, half expecting the figure to be on my heels. Instead, I faced silence, the only sound my ragged breathing. I stepped inside, keeping low, planning my exit. The break room was practically untouched, except for the overturned chair. I needed an escape route. My eyes darted around, searching for anything that could help. Then I noticed a small paper on the counter. It had bloodstains near the edges. I frowned, hesitating before I picked it up, instinct screaming at me to leave. The paper was a crumpled note with hurried, jagged handwriting. "They're still here. Don't let them take you." My heart sank. It was a warning someone else had been through this before. Just then, the lights flickered again, this time plunging the room into darkness. The buzz of the fluorescent lights faded, and I felt the air grow colder. A chill swept through the break room, making my skin prickle. "Stop!" I shouted into the darkness, hoping for an answer. But all I heard was silence. Desperation crept in, and I pulled out my penlight, but the beam flickered feebly. I could hear the soft whispers in the air, like distant conversations dragging me down. Then, the unmistakable sound of footsteps echoed from the hallway outside, the rhythm steady and unnerving. They were coming closer. I had to choose. I could stay here and face whatever was haunting me, or I could risk it and escape into the hallway. I took one last look at the paper, my mind racing. Who is they? As the footsteps grew louder, I made my decision. I bolted toward the door, my heart pounding in my chest, knowing that there was no turning back. Just as I reached for the handle, I knew I was not alone. Something sinister was waiting for me out there, and whatever it was, it wanted me just as much as I wanted to survive. I pushed the door open and burst into the hallway, adrenaline pumping through my veins. My heart raced as I took off toward the nearest exit, the sound of my footsteps echoing against the tile. I could feel the heaviness of the air, a weight that seemed intent on dragging me back into that suffocating darkness. A chill ran down my back as I half turned, half expecting the figure to come barreling after me. But at that moment, the air behind me shifted, a gust of frigidness that sent a tremor through my limbs. "Help me," the whispers echoed in my mind, distant yet hauntingly close. I didn't dare look back, didn't want to acknowledge the darkness that was closing in behind me. I ran faster, driven by a primal urge to escape whatever nightmare awaited me. The emergency exit was only a few feet ahead, its green signage glowing like a beacon of hope. As I reached for the handle, a sudden crash resounded from the hallway I had just left. The sound reverberated in my chest, and I felt the urge to scream. I yanked the door open, almost tearing it from its hinges, and plunged into the stairwell. The moment the door swung shut behind me, the suffocating hush of the hospital faded. I could still hear the far-off echoes of laughter and cries, swirling amongst the shadows, but they felt a world away as I descended the stairs two at a time. The fluorescent lights flickered ominously above, but I kept moving, desperate to find refuge away from the chaos. I burst through the door into the bustling lobby, the glow of the reception area feeling almost unreal after the oppressive darkness of the upper floors. My breaths were shallow and ragged, panic still coursing through my system. "Are you okay?" A nurse standing by the desk looked at me with her brow furrowed. Her voice broke through the haze, grounding me for a moment. "You look like you've seen a ghost." It's in there," I gasped, my words tumbling out in a rush. "I had to get out. The supply room, it's not safe." I think my voice trailed off as I struggled to process everything that had just happened. "But Mr. Cartwright," I glanced back toward the door I'd just exited, the memory of his fear clawing at my insides. "He needs help. I think something has happened to him. We haven't seen him on the camera feed for a while. Just wait here. I'll get someone to check." As she moved toward the phone, I felt a sense of dread swell inside me anew. What had I left behind? What darkness lurked back there? I turned, my eyes drawn once more to the shadows near the door beyond the reception area. They seemed alive, whispering threats and pleas, a mixture of both. I fought to keep my breathing steady, my pulse hammering in my ears. By the time orderlies rushed into the lobby, I was already thinking of all the questions unanswered. Why had the figure called for help? Was it trying to deceive me, or was it trapped? I struggled to find the words to explain, but they seemed to pass right through me like water. Minutes felt like hours as the orderlies hurried off to check the supply room. I paced restlessly, glancing back toward the exit. The hospital felt off-kilter like a grand stage that had been abandoned mid-play. Why couldn't I shake off the feeling that whatever darkness had settled in those walls was far from gone? After what felt like an eternity, the orderlies returned, their faces strained. "There's no sign of Mr. Cartwright in the supply room," one of them said carefully. "But we found a lot of wreckage, broken toys, a teddy bear, a note." He glanced over at the other. "A note?" I echoed, heart rate quickening again. "Something about dark figures," the other added, his brow furrowed deeply. "You need to leave, ma'am. We're locking down the hospital for safety reasons." My heart sank. They had to believe me, there was something wrong here. What about Mr. Cartwright? What if he is still in there? "We're doing everything we can," one of them said, but I could see uncertainty flicker in their eyes. Biting my lip, I nodded but wished for answers that remained stubbornly hidden. As they began to usher me toward the exit, a distant sound of laughter floated through the hallway once more, ghostly and alluring. The nurse at the front desk looked alarmed, glancing toward where the sound originated. "We need to let us go, now," one of the orderlies urged, and panic surged. I didn't know what awaited me if I stayed, but I couldn't shake the feeling that what lay inside the hospital wasn't done with me yet. That I turned, making my escape, my breath coming in shallow gasps. But even as I walked out into the cool night air, I could still hear the whispers trailing behind me, promises and threats intertwining. I didn't hesitate, I needed to put distance between myself and that hospital. Yet an unsettling feeling settled in my chest. I could still hear that laughter in the distance, echoing in my mind, an unanswered call resonating within me, leaving me with more questions than answers. I moved to a different city after that, starting over felt like a necessity. But sometimes, when the night is still and quiet, I wonder if the hospital still stands, and whether the shadows still lurk in the hallways. Whether Mr. Cartwright found peace or if the laughter continues to haunt those desolate walls. I try not to think about it, but some nights, I swear I can still hear the whispers calling me home.